Welcome into the Draft Club. Paige Dimakos here in our studios, the Backlot Studios in Phoenix. I'm here. Keith is in New Orleans. Keith, how you doing? How you
I'm
doing? No
doing good.
joke
I'm
today.
doing
No joke today.
we post Mardi Gras, so I survived Mardi Gras. Survived the NFL Combine, right? And we back
Yep.
with the Draft Club. And we Paige Marcos, we back with the Draft Club with breaking news, right? Geno
Yeah.
Smith has been traded from the Seattle Seahawks to the Las Vegas Raiders, right? He follows Pete Carroll, and everybody wonders. And I want to take a couple different lenses with this, right? Because people talking about, hey, this puts the Las Vegas Raiders outside of drafting a quarterback. And I say that is not the case at all. You are absolutely wrong. And I'm gonna break that down why. Think about this. When Pete Carroll got to Seattle, what's the first thing he did? He signed Matt Flynn to a big contract, and then he went and drafted Russell Wilson and made him the starter. Then you think about this.
In
Who
the
else has
third
been carried?
round. In the
In the
third
third
round.
round. Yes, 100%.
Okay.
100%. But
Just want
I
to be
want you
clear where Russ was drafted. It's not a first. We're not talking drafting Shedeur. We're talking about drafting a guy in the third round.
Yeah, so I'm gonna finish this point.
Okay.
Tom Brady, when he came into the NFL, obviously 6th round pick, but what did he do? He sat behind Drew Bledsoe and learned. These are both guys that understand to properly develop a quarterback. You have to insulate him with the proper things, and sometimes a veteran quarterback could be the best situation for a young quarterback. And they both have had success with that situation. So I look at it and say, hey, if Shedeur Sanders was there, does that put the Las Vegas Raiders out of context of drafting him? I don't think so. We like Pete Carroll. Why? Because Pete marches to the beat of his own drum. And then he's one of the few guys that has conviction. He doesn't worry about the media. He does what he wants to do and he lets it all play out. So I wouldn't put it past them. If they really love Shedeur Sanders and what he is, they can say, hey, we're going to have Geno Smith here and then we're going to let them compete. Pete Carroll is a competition guy. He loves competition. He feels like it brings the best out of him.
Okay. I let you talk that whole time, and I let you spit that
I
ridiculousness.
told you I was coming in hot. I told you I was
Yeah,
coming
you're
in hot.
coming in hot, but you didn't toss it to me. We didn't ask. No, I'm like, he just has a take today. He wanted to get
We
that
got to
off his
roll.
chest.
It's
He
breaking
wanted to get
news.
that off his chest. Okay. So first and foremost, let's break down why that's a very different scenario. I
Yeah,
already I
let's talk
already
about it.
combated that, right? Russell Wilson third round, not the same as Shedeur Sanders coming in with checks notes. Deion Sanders is a father, okay, coming in to say I'm gonna be the guy. There is a lot more complexity with this conversation than there was with Russell Wilson and in that time frame. You're also
What?
talking about pre-social media being the way that it is now. This is a totally different ball game, eras wise. Pete Carroll, yes, is the right guy to handle a competition, and I do think that it would probably be the best thing for Shedeur as well. I just, it's tough to imagine that Shedeur Sanders is going to be drafted to be put into a potential backup situation right off the jump. It's very hard to imagine that. It's very hard to imagine that Deion Sanders is going to allow that situation to happen, quite frankly.
So
And maybe it does break out, and maybe Deion behind the scenes with Shedeur is having conversations about, listen, this is the best thing for you. You guys want to go in, you want to compete. Obviously, Shedeur is not afraid to compete either, but this screams to me. First of all, they didn't just give up any pick; they gave up a third round pick.
yeah,
Okay,
yep.
that's a top 100. That's a day two pick. So that means that they're not just bringing him in for nothing, right? We know that Pete Carroll believes in him. We know that he's revitalized his career, and maybe they're not sold on the quarterbacks this year. That very well could be the case.
Yeah.
That very well could be the case, or they could draft a quarterback later. They could
Which
trade out. They could get a Jalen Milrow later on in the draft. They could get any of these guys besides Cam and Shedeur. They could get later on. And I think there's a much better chance that that's the scenario that plays out if they do draft a quarterback. If they
yeah,
do
all
draft
right.
a quarterback.
No, let's get into a couple of the points you made, right? You first of all, you talked about the social media perspective, right? As far as what social media does. Can you think of two people who can give less damns about social media than Pete Carroll and Tom Brady? I couldn't
I,
think of
I agree with that.
two
Still an
people in
owner
the NFL.
behind the scenes. There's
They
still an
they
owner
don't.
behind the scenes.
Then the other part of that, Deion Sanders. Do you think he's going there and trying to tell Tom Brady, right? Champions respect champions at the end of the day. And I think that he feels as though, hey, if you're doing right by my son, because as a parent, that's all you want. You want your child to be in a situation to where they're done right by. If you feel like my son is not being in a good situation, right? And you feel like he should sit down, and this is going to be the best path for him to be successful as possible, then you can't get mad at that. Would I rather him sit on? So let's talk about this proposition. Would I rather him start right away in Cleveland or sit down for a year in Las Vegas?
Yeah, but the Cleveland's got the number 2 pick. Don't
Yeah,
matter.
I'm with that. I
Don't
get
matter.
that.
That like it doesn't matter. Like at the end of the day, you're not controlling this situation unless you're moving up to 1 with Tennessee. Like the only people that truly control their own destiny is number 1. And if you're not number 1, then you don't have the ability to say that in general. So I think I agree with you with the Tom Brady and Pete Carroll part with social media. I think the other part that we're both of us are forgetting is
Mhm.
Shedeur separated himself when he was at the combine from his dad. Deion didn't show up. He didn't overshadow his son. It was all about Shedeur and him separating himself and becoming his own man. Is that what Shedeur wants? Does Shedeur want to go in and not be the man right away? I don't know. Doesn't seem like that's what he would want
Yeah,
based off of what we know.
I go back to the two people that are qualified to have this conversation, and Tom Brady and Pete Carroll. Pete can say, "Listen, do you know what I did for Russell Wilson? I made him a future Hall of Famer." And because I had conviction in what he do. Tom Brady can sit down. You know what the best thing for my career ever was, and the reason why I'm the greatest quarterback of all time is because I sat behind a veteran. That cachet sits there and it rings proper, right? Like it's a big deal overall when you're talking about just sitting down with a guy and getting and planning out the future for him and what the blueprint could be.
And I know that Tom Brady is close with Shador. We know
Yep.
that. That's always been the link with them with the Raiders. And there's not no chance that they're going to get him. But I do think one, the conversation that has been surrounding these QBs, I think has been largely smokescreens from these teams to try and get
Mhm.
people to believe that they're not bought into these guys, but they are bought into these guys. And you've got, a consensus right now that Cam Ward's number 1 overall.
Yeah.
Let's see what that looks like in a month. There's a
Yep.
long time between now and the draft. Long time. And there's
You know,
Schottenheimer's offense with Shedeur Sanders in Tennessee. I think it would work out pretty. I think it would work out pretty nicely. I think it would
no,
work
I
out pretty
think I
nicely.
think it would too, and we still have to. You know what I think this QB race is going to come down to, and we get this every year, right? You've been doing this for 10 years, right? It's going to come down who has the most fireworks in their pro day, right? Like
Oh yeah.
who designs the best pro day? Remember Johnny Manziel? He
Oh
came out, he took it to the next level when he did the shoulder pads and the helmet, and the QB coach was running around with the broom, and then Zach Wilson he launched the football off his back leg. And then Justin Fields, literally in the same draft, he said, I got to do that too, right? Like as much buzz, let me show you I can do that throw. Now, ask me if either quarterback have ever did that throw in the NFL, right? But
yeah,
it's going
sure.
to come down to the pro day. So I'm right there with you, just as far as this is a long way from over as far as who is
100%.
QB1, because maybe Tennessee is like, hey, if somebody wants to jump up to grab Cam Ward, we'll trade down to 3 and then take Shedeur Sanders plus all of the draft capital that we had. So there's a whole lot left to this. But I
Keith,
love what the
I was going to say before we move on, I don't think
yeah.
Tennessee really knows what the hell they want to do either. Like I
No,
don't
I don't.
I don't think they're bought in, especially and this has become more complex because Abdul Carter's injury information that came out while we were at the
Yeah.
combine and him having to have surgery. And although it's said that he'll come back and he'll be ready for the season, it's still surgery. It's still medicals. It's still 8 weeks. It's still not going to see him at a pro day, not getting that up close and personal time that they were expecting. It's still Travis Hunter and everybody's excitement with him, but then also, are you really, really going to take him number 1 overall?
Yep.
Are you gonna like it's Tennessee is in a tough spot because they don't know if they want to move on from Will Levis. Okay, that's still up in the air. I think they should, but they don't know. They're still half in, half out. They're split in the front office. They've got new regime, new things going on, and they're not. I don't envy the place that they're in because they have a lot of question marks, and people think fans especially think it's so easy to just go, well, just trade out. You can't just say I want to trade out and that's how it happens. You have to have a trade partner. And if the trade partner doesn't come to the table, that doesn't happen. So I get it. Every fan base thinks, "Oh yeah, I could just trade. I could just trade." That's not how this goes. There's not 100 draft day trades. Like as much as we all like to talk about it, it's usually very few and far between and you got to takes two to tango. Takes two to tango.
Yeah, it does. And I'm gonna just end this segment with this. The Las Vegas Raiders, Pete Carroll, Tom Brady. I just wouldn't take them off the board of drafting a quarterback. These
Oh,
are two wild card people that believe that they know football at a high level. And guess what? I respect their football
me
acumen. They've
too.
made really good decisions and they understand quarterbacking at a high level. But we have to talk about this, right? Because the Las Vegas Raiders, they acquired Geno Smith. The Seattle Seahawks, they need a quarterback. And we're going to do this segment. Should you draft a rookie or go with vet? We're going to go through about 5 teams and have this conversation. Seattle Seahawks, their quarterback situation. Do they go with a rookie quarterback or do they go with a veteran?
I think it's time to go for a rookie. I think it's time. You had this piecemeal in between period with Geno, and he was your bridge guy, right? He got you through these last few years.
Yep.
He got you to consistently being a good team, letting your rookies on defense really start to gel and get better, and that defense has started to come back to that Legion of Boom-esque type of a team. You've become they tried to find an identity in a post Pete Carroll world, right? That's what it was. They're trying to, and it feels like this might be their shot. So is Seattle now in a position where they might trade up? I think yes. I think that might be in play. I think they may be sitting at the spot and looking at a guy like Jalen Milroe or some of these other cute quarterbacks. And we all know the pro days, like we talked about earlier, there's going to be somebody that somebody watches in shorts. Okay. I want to be
Yep.
clear. Somebody in shorts, and I say that on purpose so that fans understand what I mean by that. It means they're not playing real football. They're in shorts, okay? And they're running around and they look really good at the pro day and somebody falls in love with them. Okay? And let's see what happens. Let's see who that guy is. And we didn't see that happen at the combine, and that's largely because nobody did anything. We didn't hardly see any of these QBs do anything. So I think we could see Seattle trade up for a rookie. I think they should take this time to get a rookie quarterback because you had your bridge guy and it worked out and it went really well. And now Geno's in Las Vegas. It's time to move on. It's time to find a new face of your franchise. And that's what I hope that they do. Please don't bring Aaron Rodgers there. I don't want to see Aaron Rodgers there. Keep him
He
out of
would
the
kind of
West.
fit. He would fit that vibe though. That Northwest, all of the different vibes they
He's
have
very
going on.
grungy. Yeah, he
Yeah,
fits that
yeah,
for sure.
he
Yeah.
embraces that. He's from what? From Cali. I'm gonna go with this. Don't rule out Sam Howell. And the reason I say that is
Mm,
because this is the same organization that after Geno Smith been in the NFL for what 5 to 7 years and played bad football, they said we're gonna make Geno Smith our
yeah.
starting quarterback, right? And he played well. I wonder if they're saying, hey, like this is a confidence thing in Sam Howell because when you talk about the Washington Commanders, right? We can't rule out the fact of there's some franchises and the Commanders are not like that now. But the past Commanders were equivalent to the Jets, right? They find a way to mess things up. And so I wonder if Seattle's saying, hey, we have enough insulated pieces that we may be able to rock with Sam Howell. And that's why we feel confident with trading Geno Smith away. Now, do I think if that's not the case, definitely go get you a rookie quarterback, right? I think you're just at this point, if you have to offload DK Metcalf, you just released Tyler Lockett, right? I think if that's the case and you're truly pressing the reset button, go get you a rookie quarterback that you really like.
Keith, do you feel like you saw enough? Because Sam Howell had moments in
Yeah.
Washington and with a bad, kind of a bad environment across the board, ownership, like it was all toxic around him, right? But did you see enough that you're like intrigued to see that, or what?
I
What?
am. I'm
Okay,
I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued with Sam Howell as a starting quarterback in the NFL, getting
yeah,
real valuable reps in a situation where people are actually trying to win football games. Okay, that was not what the Washington Commanders were trying to do when he was playing. And we just have to, like I said, I'll open the larger context and conversation of the success stories of Geno Smith literally with Seattle, right? Like, how does
yeah.
he play well in Seattle and he was bad for 3 other teams? So I want to see Sam Howell. He was a mobile quarterback, and you was with the draft network at this time. I don't think I was, but Sam Howell at one point was considered the number one overall quarterback, right?
Yeah,
And
he
he
was.
decided to come back to school for his senior year, and then that's when he dropped to the third, fourth, fifth round, right?
Yep.
So the guy has talent. It's just a matter of are they going to put a system around him to be able to figure things out. So
You know
I'm
what's
intrigued.
funny? I was at Draft Network at that time. The conversation around him prior to him deciding to go back to school is very similar to Drake May, honestly, which
Yeah.
is
Yep.
funny for people like to think about in context of like that's where he was considered to be, and he came back and went back to a bad North Carolina team and got. I mean, he
Mhm.
just got sacked more than anybody in college football. It was like that a horrible offensive line. They didn't have weapons around him. I think he has enough talent. I'm intrigued by this because I'm intrigued by quarterbacks continuing to break through the narratives of them being busts and them proving that the situation, because you and I both know this and agree on this, the situation matters more
Yep.
than anything. And I think this is, hey, maybe now when given this environment, given the time to actually develop and get better, and he's got a good roster around him, maybe this is a situation where Sam Howell has success. I would still really like to see them go get a guy, but we'll see. Seattle's
Yep.
pretty good at this, so maybe they do it again.
Yep, let's go with this. We got another team. We're going to the Big Apple, the New
Oh boy.
York Giants, and we know that Aaron Rodgers has been linked to them. But should they go after a veteran or a rookie?
I The thing about the Giants is I have no faith in them. Okay. And it's because I
Where
don't
did
understand.
this? Can I ask a question? Where did this go wrong? Where did this go from a world class organization to now people saying that this is a borderline dumpster fire? Because just 10, 15
Yeah.
years ago, they were the cream of the crop. They were
Yeah,
doing
for
what the
sure.
Eagles were doing, right? When they won 2 Super Bowls with Eli Manning, they were doing everything the right way. I'm gonna let you get into your point. I just want to ask you first, though, where do you think this went wrong?
The Mara family, behind the scenes, the owners, some change in the amount of people in the family that have say, them letting ears from the outside talk a little bit too much, and this is what happens. It's it's nearly always ownership. When things are bad, it's like almost 90% of the time it can be traced back to ownership. And it's not talked about a lot because the owners control the media. And that's why we don't hear about it, especially in an old market. This is an old franchise, a legacy franchise. They're having a tough time right now because they got embarrassed, Keith. We talked
Mhm.
about this a lot. They got
Yep.
embarrassed on a national level that I have never seen before. They gave access behind the scenes to what their process was in the offseason. And the owner of the team, John Mara, said on camera it would make him sick to watch Saquon Barkley go to the Eagles. And not only did he go to the Eagles, he was an MVP caliber candidate. He just signed a 2-year big deal with the Eagles and he won a Super Bowl. Holy cow, did you get embarrassed? And that's why I don't have faith in you, because you brought the man who did it back. Why
Yep.
does Joe Sheen still have a job? I like Brian Dable. I think he's a good coach. He deserves the opportunity to be separated from Joe Sheen to lead this team forward. And right now, the initial question that you asked, right? Who are they going to go after? I think they're going to be idiots, and I think they're going to do the Aaron Rodgers thing.
You
And I
think
think,
so?
you know why?
Oh,
You know
why?
why? Because they have 1 year. They don't have the opportunity to have the rookie year. Like, they don't have that. And because they are making decisions like that from that place, it's set up for failure. It's set up for failure because they're going to be forced into a decision that they're not going to get that rookie clock back, right? That we all talk about with new coaches and GMs, where you get like, oh yeah, you draft a rookie and you kind of get 2 years.
Mhm. You
No,
get a
no,
couple years,
they
yeah.
got 1 year. They got 1 year. Do they trust any of these rookies to get it right? I don't think so. I don't think so. But we'll see. I
So
do think they do the Rodgers thing. I do think they
So
do that.
and I would dislike the Rodgers situation,
Hate it.
right?
I would hate it.
And
Hate it.
because it just it's the Aaron Rodgers or Sam Darnold. Both of those guys were
Yeah.
guys that played for the New York Jets, right? In the same metropolitan area, city, whatever. Played in the same
Same
stadium, right?
stadium. Same
Yeah,
stadium.
same stadium at the end of the day. And what you don't want to do is, do you remember when what was this? It was the Miami Dolphins and the New York Jets, and they kind of Adam Gase, right? And they were in the same division, and then the New York Jets followed up and hired Adam Gase after he failed with the Miami Dolphins. Like that was one of the worst situations I've ever seen, right? And
One of the best press conferences and stupidest things I've ever seen in my entire life. Thank you for
yeah,
bringing that back into my life. That was great.
yeah,
It's
like you
great.
watch this guy fail multiple times in your
Yeah.
division, and then you say, you know who we want? That guy, right? Like that's insane. And so I look at it and I say, if Aaron Rodgers or Sam Darnold fails for the New York Giants, you are a public embarrassment. And what happens is you and the Washington Commanders, y'all swap places, right? As far as
Yeah.
the Washington Commanders being one of the worst ran franchises, now you are. Now I'm gonna answer the question of what do I think they do. I think a rookie quarterback may be their way out, and I'm gonna say this is the reason why. That he doesn't even have to play well, but if he shows promise, if they're able to get Cam Ward and Cam Ward is able to have some type of promise towards him, I think Brian Daboll, at least Daboll, I'm not speaking on Joe Sheen. Joe Sheen, what you did, it was recorded, it was on camera, it was not smart. Everybody told you don't do it, it didn't make sense, and
Ah,
you did it. That's on
you
you. But I
dumbass,
think
bro. No,
you know
you
what that is?
dumbass.
Yeah, I can't save you. I can't
Yeah.
save you from that.
Mhm.
But Brian Daboll, I agree with you about him being a good head coach, or not even getting a good opportunity because he's never had a good quarterback. He gets his hand on Cam Ward. I think he can do some things
I
and then
agree.
get people to buy into, hey, he can develop Cam Ward into being a really good quarterback because what he does have on his resume is I developed Josh Allen.
Yeah, I developed Josh Allen, took Daniel Jones to the playoffs, okay? Which is crazy. Crazy to think about that he was able to
And
facilitate
I
that.
want to say, I'm pretty sure he was the OC somewhere in that era with Jalen Hurts and Tua
He was.
Tagovailoa at
He
Bama. He did
was.
a year. He did a year
Yeah.
there. So
He's
he's
a
seen
quarterback.
success.
Yeah, he's a quarterback guy. He's proven,
Yep.
right? But my question to you is, do you think they can get Cam Ward at 2? Or is it going to take going up to 1?
I think they could get him. They could get him at. They may be able to get him at 3. I think at 3 they have their
Oh, they're at
option
3.
because yeah, they're
Uh,
at 3. I don't. I
uh,
because
you
listen,
think
I
they're
don't
going to
think
be
the
at 3?
Browns. This is my conspiracy theory. I think if Cam Ward get drafted to the Titans, I think the Cleveland Browns. I think Shedeur Sanders tells Cleveland, "I'm not coming there," and then they're able to get him. I think that's what happens. I have a conspiracy theory about that. This is going to shake out though.
I,
They are
I'm
avoiding
I'm with
Cleveland.
I'm with that. I'm with that. But then it's Shador that goes to New York. You're saying, or Cam goes to New
I
York?
think they get either one, and I
Okay.
think they're comfortable with them.
Okay.
And I think they're able to do some things with that. But let's
Okay.
talk about let's leave the Big Apple, right? And let's go to a smaller market. Tennessee Titans.
Mm,
Drafted Will Levis a couple years ago. Brian Callahan and Will Levis, it was well documented that they did not get along, right? I think it was your Chicago Bears game where Callahan was like, "What are you doing?" Right?
that's
Um,
correct.
so I want to ask you, should they go after a veteran or draft a rookie? They're sitting at what, the number one overall spot. We have to talk
Yeah.
about this. Should they for sure draft a quarterback or should they go after a veteran?
I mean, I didn't like Will Levis coming out, and I don't like Will Levis now. I think the toxicity of I'm not saying he can't make it in the NFL. He's just not going to make it in this current situation. I
Yeah.
can't. You can't have the toxic relationship between a head coach and a young QB be that bad that early and come back from it. You know what I mean? Like it just. I was at that Bears game. It is absolutely unbelievable that the Bears came back and won that first game. Like
Mhm.
they had no business doing that. And Will Levis had many of these what the fuck moments throughout the year, right? Where you were
Well,
watching him.
even college,
Yeah,
like
you were just like, bro, what are you doing? And you saw like Callahan did not do a good job of like
masking it.
hiding how he
Nope,
felt.
he
You could
didn't.
see it on the
Honestly, he
side.
threw him under the bus.
No,
Oh,
right
no, you
away.
know what? He didn't even throw him under the bus. He just didn't say that we're a partnership, right? Like he made it
Oh,
clear that I didn't come to the club with him. He
no.
came by himself, right? He made it clear we're
He
not
let him
friends.
sit outside. He let him sit
Yeah.
outside. He went into
Yep. 100%.
VIP, got into his back section, said, "Yeah, I don't know him.
Yeah.
Never seen him before."
100%. That's
Yeah, no,
exactly what happened.
no, like never seen him. And you saw that in press conferences. You saw that on the sideline. Like this was, it's bad. And I just don't think you're going to get Will Levis, who I've been around. I'm not saying I know him well, but I've been around him enough to know thinks very highly of himself. Okay.
Mhm.
Not the guy that I think ego wise is going to be able to come back from that. I think he needs the type of coach that's going to coddle him a little bit to get him if he's ever going to have success. So I think they need to either get a veteran in there or they need to go get or they need to, draft a quarterback. I think this is a situation where you could see maybe a Russell Wilson go there. They've talked about Aaron Rodgers going there. I think Callahan coaching wise with Aaron Rodgers would be very interesting. Very interesting duo. I don't know that Aaron Rodgers can make it with anybody with that ego, but if he humbles himself and he's able to come around and go, "Yeah, I'm going to listen to a coach." Maybe that's the right fit for him. I would rather see Aaron Rodgers in Tennessee than go to the New York Giants. I really don't want to see him in New York. For him and for the team, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think they should go veteran. Even if they draft a rookie, if I'm the head coach, I'm pounding the table for a veteran quarterback. With this situation and improving guys. I'm looking at Kirk Cousins, trying to get Kirk
Yeah.
Cousins from Atlanta. Do I get a fourth, fifth round pick, right? And now I have a starting quarterback that I know could put up numbers. And at
Kirk
the end
would
of the
be
day,
great in that
yeah,
offense.
I think, and I think you can do the same thing, and it's unfortunate, right? We kind of talked about it, but you can still draft a rookie quarterback, but I think the if you're the head coach in a complex situation, because the GM comes in, he feels like I have multiple years to win. I could wait to find my guy. The head coach is sitting there like, hey, I almost got my ass fired this year, right? I want to win now. So you have to find some type of middle ground where there's an agreement that I'm going to be the head coach next year for sure. But I think bringing in a veteran, drafting a rookie, I think that's where the Tennessee Titans need to leave off of it. But there's two teams I want to roll through real quickly. Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh Steelers. This franchise is disappointing that they can't make it past the first round, right? They've been a model of consistency, but
Mhm.
I guess consistently
Consistently,
average.
consistently mediocre. Yeah.
Yeah, yep. And so they look at their quarterback situation. There's a lot of fingers pointing. Justin Fields, Russell Wilson. Do they draft a rookie quarterback or do they try to bring in another veteran?
So this one I feel like is so obvious, and I don't understand why it's not being discussed. And I think it's because everybody likes to pick on Russell Wilson, but Russell Wilson was really good. He came in after Justin Fields and Mike Tomlin. The thing you cannot take away from Tomlin is his conviction as a coach, right? When he makes a decision, he sticks with it. The
He rolls with
organization
it. Yep.
sticks with it. And it was the right decision. And then they had an injury to the only weapon that they had, their wide receiver, and they struggled during that time frame. But how can we look at this offense and really tell Russell Wilson and that offense that they put pieces around him to be successful? When you look at who does Joe Burrow throw the ball to in their
Hmm.
division? You're
Yep.
joking, right? Like they got nobody there. So I don't think the question is who should you go with? The question is have some consistency, guys. Russell Wilson's still young enough that you could sign him to a 3-year deal, keep him around for the next couple years, have some consistency, build around him, get a better running back, right? Draft a running back, get a couple of receivers. There's guys like Devontae Adams available on the market right now. Go
Amari
get one
Cooper.
of Amari
Yep.
Cooper or Devontae Adams. Like, put some real pieces and horses around this offense because Big Ben had Jerome Bettis, Antonio Brown, Juju Smith. Like, are we joking? What offense
Yep.
do you guys have
Mike
around you?
Wallace. Like there
Yeah,
was a time where Pittsburgh Steelers they consistently drafted like
top
they were
receivers.
wide receiver U for the
Correct.
NFL, right? Where
Correct.
they just rolled out wide receivers left and right. They even let guys walk and still like I think they
100%.
that was the year I think they let Mike Wallace walk and then found Antonio Brown in the fifth, sixth round, right? So
That's
they
why
are
it's weird
nowhere
to me,
near.
Keith. Like,
Yep.
honestly, it's become weird to see how they've been churning through offensive coaches and and it feels like, guys, you have an opportunity to go back to being the Steelers. Like, be consistent with the guys that you have. You have Mike T, you have Arthur Smith coming back for a second year. Keep Russ and build around him. Because I don't understand why you guys think any quarterback's going to have success if you try and roll it back with the mediocre pieces you have around him. It's just not enough. It's not
Yep.
enough in the current NFL, and it's not enough to keep up with the people that are in your division.
Yep, 100%. So I think simply put, bring Russ back. If you want to draft a rookie in later rounds, but I bring Russ back, let Russ cook. And your problem is you have a roster problem, not a
Yep.
Russell Wilson problem. And I
Thank
think
you.
that you're going to regret it if you move on from him because there's not a lot of quarterbacks out here. And they're probably going to have the same issue. There we go, mic drop. Drop the mic
You
on.
have a roster problem, not a Russell Wilson problem. That's a bar. Thank you, Keith.
Ooh, I
I'm
told you I came in
with
hot. I came
that.
in hot today, Paige Dimakos. Let's wrap this segment up with the Indianapolis Colts. They have Mr. Anthony Richardson, right? 6'4", 240, 4.3 yard time. Inconsistencies across the board. So the question is it time to move on with a rookie quarterback or time to move on with a veteran?
Nah, it's vet time. Time to
Yeah,
bring in a vet.
I think so.
Time
Yep.
time to time to bring in a vet. If you're ever going to give Anthony Richardson any level of opportunity to have success with your organization, you have to bring in the right vet to come in and be the guy over the next year or two. Because, like everybody forgets, when Anthony Richardson came out, he was a project. Just because they drafted him in the top 10 did not make him ready to play football. He had played very little college football. Everybody knew who he was and then was surprised when he did absolutely everything we knew he was going to do. I don't understand why this happens, the lapse in people's judgment because they see people run fast 40s in situations that literally never happen in football and are not applicable. Right? Not applicable. He's never going to stand on the ground, put his hand in the dirt, and run a 40 straight as a quarterback in the NFL. So I hope for Anthony Richardson that he gets the opportunity to sit behind a guy for 2 years, develop, get better, and then they can make the switch. Just like the Green Bay Packers have been doing my entire life. This isn't that hard, people. I don't understand why everybody makes it out to be something harder than it is when Green Bay has literally shown you for 30 years how to do it. They've done it for literally. Jordan Love sat for 4 years. Let people develop, get better. And that's a guy you drafted who was further along in some ways than Anthony Richardson, which
Yep.
is
No, a
crazy.
million percent. Played a
Like,
lot more football. Played
a
a lot
lot
more
more
football.
football, like a project by definition. So if you want to revitalize your top 10 pick and you want to give yourself the best opportunity to win with a pretty decent roster, still in a bad division, get a veteran. Any of the veterans, honestly, sign
Yeah.
one. Pick one and
I'm
go with it.
I told you I'm smashing the Justin Fields button on this. If I'm Shane Steichen,
Yup.
I'm willing and dealing, I'm whining and dining. Bring me Justin Fields because I don't have to change my offense. I
Thank
don't. And
you.
then the thing is that you get clear reps too. Because think about it, when we get to practice, right, and we have a script, I don't have to change my plays for said veteran if it's Kirk
Mm-mm.
Cousins or Aaron Rodgers, and then change it back if it's Anthony Richardson. I could
Uh-huh.
let these guys truly run the same exact plays and see who's better at it. Point
Yep.
blank period. This is our offense. This is what we're installing. I don't have to worry about creating new plays for pocket passers, right? Go get Justin Fields, a guy that's proven, who simply just hasn't been in the right scheme. He has
Yep.
not been in a scheme that fits him, and we consistently forget Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is a Super Bowl champ, and you have to call him champ for the rest of his life, right? But they put insulated pieces around him, and they allowed him to grow and develop and put him in good situations. Take these guys, these dual threat quarterbacks, and put them in situations. You wouldn't let Tom Brady run a triple option. So
Hello?
why would you do this? It makes no sense in my book, Paige Dimakos, but that's where I go with it. I think Justin Fields to the Indianapolis Colts, I think is honestly, it's a underrated situation. It's not a big market team, but it's a great situation for him. And who knows? Because this Indianapolis Colts team, at least offensively, they're extremely talented. You're talking about
Yeah.
Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, A.D. Mitchell, Josh
Yeah.
Downs, Jonathan Taylor. They got dudes.
They got a
They,
squad. Yeah, they
they
got a
got a
squad,
squad.
honestly. And I'm excited for Justin if they take, because like,
Yep.
as you know how I feel that the Bears, they've never treated quarterbacks well, right? And I'm hoping in this post Virginia McCaskey era we can actually start treating our players well, and we can do the right things by our players. But Justin Fields is a hell of a talent, and he's a guy that I think
Yep.
like you just said, he's never been put in the right situation. When the Ravens, I will go back to this over and over again. When the Ravens drafted Lamar Jackson, what did they do? They
Flip the
changed
script.
every aspect of what they did. The Super Bowl winning coach, okay, changed everything about what they did to best suit the guy that they drafted. And they drafted him in the later rounds. I don't understand why people can't look at the good organizations and learn some of these good tendencies and do the same things. But Indianapolis, I think, is the right fit. And you brought up the best point. They don't have to change the offense, and it would be great for Anthony too. Compete
Yep.
and see who wins out. I think Justin wins that battle. Anthony gets to learn for a year or two, and it ends up being a really fun team we get to watch next year.
Yep, Paige DeMarcos, they don't want to repeat. You want to know why? Because sometimes doing the right thing is boring, right? Sometimes they want to spice it up for themselves and do the wrong thing.
The
But
right thing is always good. Winning is good. Y'all are idiots.
I don't think all of them trying to win. Some trying to win some headlines. But Paige DeMarcos, you mentioned your Chicago Bears and doing right by quarterbacks. It seems as though they took the right step a couple days ago. They signed a couple offensive linemen.
They
Let's
did.
talk about this as an impactful move. And what do you think this means for the Chicago Bears moving forward?
So here's what happened last year versus this year. Last year, they made the headlines. They did splashy stuff by signing wide receivers and doing, but you know what actually wins football games?
Yep,
The trenches.
the
You
trenches.
just, you just saw the Philadelphia Eagles put an absolute clinic on the Kansas City Chiefs on both the offensive and the defensive line. And you want to know why they won that Super Bowl? Because that's where they were better. And it wasn't even close. They had the best player in the world on the field, Patrick Mahomes, and he couldn't do shit in that game. And that is point proven. Caleb Williams could be the next coming of Patrick Mahomes, but it does not matter if you cannot protect your guy. It doesn't matter. And that's where last year you saw Caleb Williams, lack of consistency on this offensive line, they had bad chemistry. They just didn't have the right pieces. And
Injuries. Yep.
Ryan Poles came from Kansas City. He's a former offensive lineman. This is what he promised the Bears, and he went out and did it. They spent money. Thank God they're spending some cash in free agency. I'm so proud of the Bears for spending their money that they have to go protect their quarterback. And I get it, fans. It's not sexy, but you know what wins football games? These not sexy moves, because the offensive line is what matters more than anything else to protect your quarterback. And this was the right move. The moment since they've done this, I've been smiling. I've been happy. I've been walking around like, I don't know what to do with myself that the team is making good moves. And I get that the fans are like, well, I want this and that. I don't care. This is what matters for your young quarterback. This is how you win football games. These are the decisions that needed to happen. And I, quite frankly, am shocked that it happened. Quite frankly.
I'll go with this, and this is my statement for this. Them signing the two offensive linemen, we will look back on it, and this will be more important than them bringing in Roma Dunze and Keenan Allen last year. That's how I feel about it, because you get the trenches together matters. Ben Johnson came from Detroit, where Detroit had one of the best offensive lines. He's seen Jared Goff play the best football. He's confident that, guess what? I can scheme stuff up if the offensive line does their job. They are
Correct.
on a path and a track to do the same thing that the Kansas City Chiefs did a couple years ago. They're about to bring in an entire new offensive line. That's two
Mhm.
guards. They're probably going to draft a tackle. They're probably going to bring in another tackle and then revamp this offensive line and see what they can do when you give Caleb Williams the time, because everything didn't match up last year. You didn't have a good offensive line, and your wide receivers were not necessarily burners, but you're asking them to run past people. It's just not going to work. It was not good football and good design
Bad
out there.
offensive.
And yep,
Bad offensive coach. Bad. It was all bad. It was
it
all
was
bad.
it was
The
it
fact
was
that the
all
fact
bad.
that Caleb showed you any level of promise is a testament to how good the kid is. Literally.
100%, 100%. And I think people don't realize how good his numbers were and compared to the rookie quarterbacks that they said had really good years overall. Well, Paige Dimakos, I have a stat for you.
Mhm.
Since 2022, it's been two edge rushers that have led the NFL in sacks since 2022. That is Trey Hendrickson. That is Miles Garrett. Both
Hmm.
appear to be on the move. What does that impact?
Let's see. Let's start with Trey. Cincinnati. We need to talk. Is I just talked about with the Bears. You saw your offense. Okay. Joe Burrow put up all-time numbers and you missed the playoffs. You want to know why? Because your line still ain't good and your defense sucks. And that's not going to be winning football. I don't care how good Joe Burrow is. I don't care how many damn receivers you have. You're not winning football games doing this shit. It doesn't make any sense to me. How do you have a guy when you draft somebody like this? The goal is for them to become Trey Hendrickson. So to not keep him is a huge miss for them. A
So
huge miss for them.
I have a question. And if they're sitting there because they have Jamar Chase still on the books, they have to pay T. Higgins too, right? So the question is this a
I'm
T.
not.
Higgins?
Yeah, go ahead. Finish it.
I was gonna
Sorry.
say, is this a T. Higgins versus Trey Hendrickson situation where they're
And I
choosing T? And my second question would be, what option would you choose?
It's not even close, Trey Hendrickson. Like I'm
Yep.
not. Yeah, not even close. First of all, you just saw this version of the offense not win you football games. I don't know how much. Like Joe Burrow and that offense are not going to be much better. They put up all time numbers. At
Yeah.
some
Yep.
point, you got to look and go and understand this is not Madden. I remember arguing with fans when they drafted a wide receiver instead of getting an offensive lineman. And Joe Burrow's had multiple injuries. Why? Because he gets hit at a clip that is ridiculous. Because their line is not good enough. I don't care how good Joe Shiesty is. We know how good he is. He was unbelievable last year, and they didn't make the postseason. So you got I just this doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I guess you're gonna have a lot of fun having a lot of wide receivers and no line and bad defense, and you're not gonna win football games. Like
Yeah, I think
it's ridiculous.
yeah, and the way where the Bengals are sitting, right? I think because it's two things. Let me get this out. That usually you can afford if you have a really good quarterback to supplement wide receivers and find other guys. Remember
Yeah,
when it was the Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison Jr. era for Peyton Manning, and
Mhm,
then out of nowhere came Pierre Garçon, and then he had Whaley, right? Like he transitioned guys, right? Then when he went to Broncos, it was Demarius Thomas,
mhm.
Emmanuel Sanders. Look at Tom Brady, what he's able to do with wide receivers. So usually, if quarterbacks are really good, they can elevate wide receivers. So
Yeah,
I agree with you. I keep Trey Hendrickson, and I think like, hey, do I need to draft a wide receiver in the second round? Can I pick up one of these veteran wide receivers and place them right for a much cheaper price tag,
yeah.
and then able to kind of build out this defense overall? So
The
Trey
other thing
Hendrickson,
is the other thing is too, Keith. This is another for the fans. The Brown family is also a very cheap
yep,
franchise. They have the least amount of scouts, the least amount of personnel people. They have horrible facilities. They don't spend money. That's why you've seen, and I good on Joe Burrow for coming out and putting
and saying
pressure
it, yeah,
on the front
because it's
office by saying like, hey, this is what needs to happen with the cap. These are the things like I appreciate that about Joe because Joe wants to win, man.
yeah,
Joe
and
wants to
you
win.
know what his next statement gonna be? I'm out of here, right? Like, yo, if y'all
100%.
can't get this done, I'm not wasting my time, right? And you've seen the franchises that actually want to win, and the franchises that are placating and telling their fan bases that they really want to win. But let's talk about this real quick. Miles Garrett,
Oh, yeah.
and we have to talk about him potentially. Some people say he's the best football player in the entire NFL. Him being on the move, what is that impact?
So here's the part, and we had a little fun with this talking about him potentially going to Detroit, right? Which if you imagine him and Aiden Hutchinson against, like, I'm
Getting
like,
after it,
yeah,
yeah.
that makes me sick as a Bears fan to think about that, right? You're like, oh God, that's like nightmare fuel for anybody in the North. But I think the part of this that really everybody needs to understand is with the cap hit that the Browns would take, they're not going to trade him before the draft. It's a $36 million cap hit. It makes absolutely no sense for them financially to trade him. It doesn't matter that they have told him this. The owner told him, yeah, I'm not meeting with you. You need to go meet with the GM, Andrew Berry. And Andrew Berry said, nah, I'm not meeting with you either. They told him. Like, that's what came out. So as much as Myles Garrett wants out, you're
I
gonna have he may have to
really,
hold out. He's
really,
probably gonna
yeah,
have to hold out. He's probably gonna have to hold out, and that's not gonna happen until August.
I really, really, really dislike their stance on that.
I
This
get
is
it.
a guy that has caused you no disruption, has
Mhm.
played for a historically bad franchise and signed up year after year, leaves it all out on the line. This is
Except when
your
he took a
fault.
helmet to Mason Rudolph's head. So,
I
there
mean,
was that.
hey, Mason,
There
yeah,
was
a,
that.
a lot of people would have took a helmet to Mason's head.
I
That's where
get
I'm
it.
gonna leave that at.
I
So
get
I
it.
don't blame him for that. Outside of that one incident, he probably wanted to take a helmet to a lot of people's head playing in Cleveland, right?
I
And
yeah.
he's never spoken out against ownership. He's never spoken out against the GM. He's been a model. He's been a class act for a
Yep.
franchise, especially being a superstar caliber football player.
Mhm.
And I tell you that I finally won out. I am at my wits end because y'all cannot figure anything out, and you're gonna tell me you don't even want to talk to me. Cool. I got something for
I'm
you.
with you. I'm with you. It's the one I think ownership could have had this. Jimmy Haslam could have had this conversation. He could have sat him down and said, "Listen, we're going to respect your wishes, but this is what we have to do." Right? And this is why every time stuff like this happens, I'm always like, "Man, the ego of the men in these ownership positions. Like, get over yourself. At the end of the day, there is a way for both of you to win. And the way you do this is you sit Myles Garrett down. You tell him, listen, Myles, we're not trading you until this date because we're not going to pay a $36 million cap hit because financially, we put ourselves in the hole with Deshaun Watson and take ownership of the fact that you messed this up for yourself. You did this to yourselves. And guess what? Myles Garrett would probably respect you for taking ownership of messing it up. And just admit that to him. Sit with him man to man, talk to him, look at him in his eyes, and not have this go out in the media and become disrespectful because now it's become disrespectful. So
Yep,
maybe
that's how I feel
maybe,
about it. Yep.
maybe Myles Garrett would have come back and been entertaining the idea of being in Cleveland if ownership or the general manager had handled this like a man. Literally, that's all. That's it. Like talk to him, sit him down. He deserves that. He's earned that right. And I think I get it financially. I wouldn't do it either until after the draft. But sit him down and tell him that. Explain why it's going to happen and start building out options so that you can be respectful to this player who's earned that right. And I I would like that to happen. Do I think it's going to? No, because now
No.
they've already done the damage. Like we've already
And
seen
yeah,
how stupid they are. So
And the
go ahead.
Cleveland Browns have been the Cleveland Browns for as long as
Correct.
the Cleveland Browns have been the Cleveland Browns. That's the
Correct.
only way I could put that, right?
Facts.
Let's do this. We got a couple veteran wide receivers, Devontae Adams and Amari Cooper. Both of those guys appear to be on the move.
Hmm.
What do you foresee with this?
I'm smiling because I'm thinking about Devontae Adams in Chicago. Oh
Oh my
man, oh
God. Here we
man,
go.
oh
Here
man.
we go. Every good player lands in Chicago. That's crazy.
Thing about this is that my team's finally spending some money. So come on down, baby. We got a rookie quarterback. Keenan Allen was on a 1 year deal. I think, and all jokes aside from like the fandom part of this, I told you this before. Keenan Allen played a pivotal role for Caleb Williams in the back half of the season. He was his go-to guy. They need a vet in there, right? And I think we know, and I've spent time around. I've interviewed Devontae. Devontae is a professional. Period.
Mhm.
He is a professional. And he deserves, quite frankly, after the shit show that he's been through over the last few years, okay, the Raiders trading for him, telling him that they're going to have Derek Carr, his college quarterback, there, and then a year later trading Derek
Trading
Carr,
their car.
okay?
Yep.
Like, and just the disrespect that Devontae as a future Hall of Famer has been shown. He's a guy that you want to talk about shows up and does the job, puts it all on the line every single week, right? This is the right person to be in that locker room in Chicago, be with Caleb, be with the young like be revitalized in the right way, mentor Roma Dunze, and be the number one dude. Be the guy that, I mean, he knows this division well. He knows this division well. And oh, I would love watching him score touchdowns in Green Bay.
Oh my
Oh
God.
man, would
Here
it
we
make me
go.
feel good? Man,
Here
would
we
it make
go.
me
Here we
feel good? It would make me feel good, Ben. And it fits. They got the money to do it, and it's a need because Keenan Allen, unless they're re-signing him. Amari Cooper, on the other hand, we'll see where he goes. We'll see where he
Yeah.
goes. I would be happy to have Amari Cooper as well. I want to be very clear. I would put that out there to Amari if he wants to come. That I would be okay
Oh
with that
my
too.
God.
Another wide receiving group that needs people, the Arizona Cardinals. They need
Mhm.
somebody else alongside Marvin Harrison, a guy who we know,
Good name,
rookie,
Paul.
super professional, but since Larry Fitzgerald left, they lack that leadership capability. It's not Kyler. It's not how he is. Marvin is also a quiet guy. They need somebody like Devontae, honestly, and that would be a good fit for them too. And he would look sick with the black visor and the red unis. Oh yeah, just all gas on that too.
There was a little bias, right? Chicago Bears, you're
What?
from Chicago. The Arizona Cardinals, you live in Arizona, right? There's a little bias going on here. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip the script and I'm gonna get a draft club people
Okay.
what they want. This is my statement with Amari Cooper and Devontae Adams to the GMs. Are you trying to win? Right. And I'm talking about the Buffalo Bills. I'm talking about the Baltimore Ravens. I'm talking about the Los Angeles Rams. I'm talking about those teams that are good football teams, that especially the teams that fall short, especially the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills. Are you trying to win football games? Are you trying to
Clearly.
win a Super Bowl? Because there's no reason not to go all out, right? Like this could potentially, you're talking about Devontae Adams and Amari Cooper. They could be that one key pickup that was very similar to Saquon Barkley that just tipped the scale a little bit, right? They can be that for your offense, especially if you have a really good quarterback. So I simply asked the question to the GMs, sitting at the top of that. Are you trying to win? The Washington Commanders, do you want Jay Daniels to take that next step? Go take a swing on one of these guys. There should be no reason why you don't bring those guys in. Potentially with the San Francisco 49ers. You
Yeah,
offloaded Debo Samuel. Or you
that's
gonna
a good call.
Brandon Ayuk is coming back from a torn ACL. You need a wide receiver, right? Like you can't bank on two guys who haven't played a lot of football as far as Jacob Coward and Ricky Pearsall. You need another wide receiver, maybe two. So that's how I
I,
look at the wide receiver situation. I say, GMs, are y'all trying to win or not?
I got some truth for Niners fans. You want an
Uh-oh.
upgrade over Debo Samuel? Put either one of those dudes in your offense.
Yep.
Literally, upgrade.
Yep.
That's an upgrade. Y'all need to check the stats. Keith Sanchez, I have to give him credit for being a truther about Debo and his 1 year of success, and then that projecting onto what he's played over the last couple of years. Go look at what he's production wise has done, literally for the last few years. It hasn't been that good. And I think that's where for you, like the mystique of that 1 year for Debo has really carried into many years post that. And I think for the Niners, man, how you need if you're like Brock's your guy, you got Brandon Ayuk coming back off an injury, George Kittle's getting a little older. Let's bring in either of those guys. I mean, man, Devontae in that offense, that'd be pretty fun. That'd be pretty
Yep.
fun.
Let's do this. Let's wrap this up with Sam Darnold. not
Mhm.
being franchise tagged by the Minnesota Vikings, seems to be on his way out the door. And
Mhm.
it don't seem like there are any bidders beating down the door for him, right? So I want to ask you, what is this impact on Sam Darnold, the NFL, the quarterback situation?
So, I think what Sam should do, and I believe it's been reported, is the Vikings, although they did not franchise tag him, doesn't
They may
mean they're
sign
not
him.
going to. They're still trying to work out a deal, right, to
Okay.
keep him there.
Yep.
They just don't want to pay him at that franchise tag clip. And to be fair, this is one of those situations, very much like how the Rams just handled the Stafford situation, right, where
Go out and see.
you kind of have to play chicken a little bit, right? And it requires you take like being really sure and having conviction that you're going to be okay if they walk, right? Because you got to be okay on the other side. But it worked for the Rams, and I think it can work for the Vikings because those two games, his last two games, scared the shit out of pretty much everybody in the NFL. Everybody. They scared him so bad because you can't get the I'm seeing ghosts Sam Darnold out of your head from the New York days because those two games mattered. And I'm not saying that's who he is, but I think we need to come to the middle on he's probably not a guy who's going to go 14-2 every year. He's a guy somewhere in the middle where I think you can win with him. But they really love JJ McCarthy. So they're in a position where I think they would do a deal, but it's got to be at a price that's not going to be 40 or 50 million dollars. It's just not going to happen. And I don't think he's going to get that on the outside market. So I think there is a good chance he ends up staying in Minnesota, which I think for him, he knows would be the best thing to stay in that offense with that coaching staff, have that consistency, and then guess what? You have him play for a little bit, and then you can trade him at before the trade deadline. Maybe you start him at the beginning of the year, build up his stock, and then trade him. You never know. That's an option as well. But that's why I think they didn't franchise tag him. And I still think there's a good shot he stays in Minnesota, mostly because the rest of the league's not knocking on the door. And we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I say this for the Minnesota Vikings: you like them or you don't, and that's both guys. That's Sam
Mhm.
Darnold and JJ McCarthy,
I
right?
agree.
Because if you like, how do you explain having the same exact quarterback situation as far as Sam Darnold coming back? If they do sign him, right, and he comes back, then he's going to be playing over JJ McCarthy because you
Mhm.
can't bench the guy that just went 14-3 or 15-2 for your team, right? And JJ McCarthy has to play that much better. And then if he doesn't play that much better, you put yourself in a situation where people run if you got a bust on your hands. Like this is a volatile situation. So I
Yep.
think you have to make a decision. And I think if you're second guessing it, bring Sam back. Bring him back. Don't even worry about playing in the middle. If you're going to move on to JJ McCarthy, move on with full conviction. I think this is similar to the Falcons conversation that we had
Uh,
with bringing Kirk Cousins back, right? It's
yeah.
like you can't have the
Can't play the
young guy.
middle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't play in the middle. So you either like them or you don't, and that applies for both guys. But the situation with Sam, I keep trying to find a destination that I like
Me
for him,
too.
and I can't find one right at this moment, right? And he's been in the Shanahan McVay because before he was with Kevin O'Connell comes from that, and then before he was there, he was with the 49ers for a year. So he got an
Yeah.
opportunity to learn the offense under Kyle Shanahan. So I'm sitting there trying to find one of those offenses that he can run and operate, and I just don't see, unfortunate for him, I think people know that there's a bad Sam Darnold out there, and there's a large sample size of it, right? To where a lot of teams are not really to buy in and say, hey, if he's not in that exact situation, we don't know what we're going to get. To wrap this up, we talked about Geno at the very beginning. Geno is probably going to the exact same situation that he was in, right? Like he's not being placed
Mhm.
in a different scheme and offense. So Sam has to find somewhere where he's going to come in and it's very similar, but those
And
slots appear,
there
yeah,
isn't
they
any
appear to
any
be
of
filled
those.
up. Yep, 100%. So
And the QB needy teams are bad rosters. I mean, this is just how this goes, right? The quarterback needy teams, traditionally, the teams that are up at the top of the draft, you're not going to be going to a place that has Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones and Kevin O'Connell as the head coach. Like, that's not the situation you're going to go to. I thought potentially if the Niners wavered on Brock Purdy, that maybe the Niners could be in play again, because that would make sense, but that's not happening.
he- I think he played a couple games. I'm pretty sure for the 49ers, and it was decent football
Yeah.
being played for him. The one spot and destination that I think may actually work out for Sam Darnold, Seattle Seahawks. That wouldn't be a
Interesting.
bad spot. Him being in the Northwest. And I say that I want to see Sam Howell, but if there's some place where you're talking about brand new situation where there's an unknown, If I'm Sam, I trust Seattle, and that's a potential
Would
place that I would want to
you
go.
trust them though now that no Tyler Lockett and they're going to trade DK Metcalf?
Yeah, that's
You've got
tough. I
no,
so I'm
that's like I trust the version of them in my head that I have from last year, and then I'm like, oh shit, yeah, no, you don't have
that's
no
not
receivers
yeah.
anymore. Yeah.
This ain't that. Now you're right. You're right. I didn't fully flush that part out. We'll have to see what happens with the DK situation. Maybe that's a leverage play for money. People leaking information and things like that. We'll see how that plays out. But just from a culture perspective, I like him in
Mhm.
Seattle. Being able to just kind of grow and develop in that situation. With Paige Dimakos, we knocked it out, right? We are on the fringe of free agency. We talked about Geno Smith on the move. We talked about all of these potential landing spots for these veteran or rookie quarterbacks, and we wrap this thing out with the hottest free agency news. You know where to come for all of your information. I'm Keith Sanchez. That's Paige Dimakos. This is Draft Club, players only.